No other tech firm in history has managed to infiltrate and influence daily life to the same insane extent as search giant Google. The Californian company's impact on how we work, play, and settle drunken arguments is so well documented it more or less goes without saying. What's perhaps less well understood is just how vast the company has grown since deciding it wasn't satisfied simply being everybody's omniscient online know-it-all. So today we're on the search for just what this modern-day behemoth actually does and asking the question, how big is Google? Ironically, for a firm whose MO is delivering definitive answers at lightning speed, Google's day-to-day operations are somewhat shrouded in mystery. Still, to get a rough sense of the scale of its core search business at least, figures from just over a year ago suggest Google handles some 3.8 million online searches every single minute of every single day. That works out, in case you were wondering, at 228 million searches per hour, 5.6 billion searches a day, or around 2 trillion searches every year. Not that all of these are meaningful or worthwhile queries, not that we're judging. Still, it's amusing to note that around 12% of searches in the US are some variation on the end user Googling the word Google. The colossal quantity of traffic Google oversees obviously translates into revenue, and plenty of it. Which is why last year, Google became only the third tech firm in history to report a market cap of more than $1 trillion. For a sense of just how much money Google earns, it's worth noting that in the middle of last year, with the COVID-19 pandemic running roughshod across the fragile world economy, the company reported quarterly revenues of $46.2 billion, a 14% increase year on year. But wait a minute, you'd be forgiven for thinking. Google is free to use, right? Well, yes, but it does run ads. One of Google's most financially significant acquisitions, the company said to buy companies at the breakneck pace of around one a week, was advertising management company DoubleClick, which it paid about $3.1 billion for back in March 2008. DoubleClick was founded in 1996, 2 years before Google, and was an early darling of the so-called .com era. Indeed, it proved to be a canny purchase. Though ultimately rebranded as Google Ads along with 2009 acquisition AdMob, DoubleClick's tech is now believed to earn Google well north of $100 billion each and every year. At this point, we need to learn about the alphabet. As part of a major root and branch restructuring the company undertook in 2015, Google executives created Alphabet as a giant multinational conglomerate, an umbrella company if you will, of which the Google search business is a mere subsidiary. This was partly to quell unease among stockholders who were cocking an eyebrow at how large and ungainly Google's extracurricular businesses were getting. More on those in a moment. But the creation of Alphabet was also intended to rationalize the corporate lines of reporting, such that queries around search, so to speak, could be directed to a new Google CEO and not clutter up the desks of visionary founders Larry Page and Sergey Brin. So what else has Google been up to? It might be easier asking what they haven't been up to. In November 2005, Google forked out the seemingly bonkers sum of $1.65 billion for YouTube, a niche video sharing site put together by a trio of ex-PayPal employees who thought users would use it to share wedding videos. That hustle is going pretty well, since you ask, netting Google comfortably north of $15 billion a year and still growing furiously despite, or maybe because of, the pandemic. Google snapped up another bargain in 2005 thanks to its $50 million purchase of Android. The commercial picture here isn't as straightforward as Android's open source nature might lead you to believe. Still, estimates suggest some 85% of the global smartphone market runs on Android, which gives Google and parent company Alphabet a fair bit of clout. To understand how that clout actually works, it's worth remembering the oft-repeated maxim that data is the oil of the 21st century. Google's ability to make money hinges on its data collection operation. In the most straightforward case, if you Googled curly-toed slippers, Google knows you're in the market for novelty footwear and can make money selling that knowledge onto manufacturers and vendors who specialize in pointy-toed slippers. Much of Google and Alphabet's growth involves harvesting user data in more subtle ways than that. For instance, Gmail, the company's wildly popular free email service, currently has some 1.5 billion users. If Google, using its sophisticated suite of algorithms, suspects one of those users might be in the market for some sweet new curly-toed slippers, it can take steps to advertise accordingly. And remember, Google customers don't just use Gmail to communicate. There's Google Duo, the video calling service, Google Meet, Google Chat, Google Podcasts, Blogger, and of course YouTube. Every time you use one of these services, Alphabet learns a little bit more about you and can use that info to sell ads. This also applies to the more corporate side of Google's work. For instance, there's Google Docs, Google Sheets, and Google Slides. Handy online alternatives to Microsoft Office for sure, but it's worth restating the fact that nothing on the internet is ever truly free. Oh, and don't forget note-taking app Google Keep or interactive online whiteboard service Google Jamboard. In 2020, Google acquired a company called Looker, which seeks to help businesses extract and analyze data at scale, crucially using natural language instead of arcane coding mumbo-jumbo. Thus, Alphabet's winning combo of cutting-edge analytics and its vast trove of everybody's data makes the $2.6 billion purchase of Looker look like a very smart investment indeed. One very obviously lucrative arm of Google's empire is Google Play, its in-house app store. Last year, it enjoyed revenues of a reported $38.6 billion, of which some 30% is creamed off by Alphabet in fees. Another perhaps easier to overlook side of the Google business is Chrome, the company's popular web browser. It's estimated that almost 65% of the global browser market is occupied by Chrome. Google Chrome was downloaded 5 billion times in 2019 alone. Not bad when you consider it didn't even exist till 2008. There's Chromebook laptops, which shipped over 9 million units in the third quarter of 2020. And don't forget Chromecast, the in-home big-screen broadcast dongle used by tens of millions around the world. Alphabet isn't shy about infiltrating your house, it seems. In 2014, the group paid a whopping $3.2 billion for smart home company Nest. Nest was founded in 2010 by two Apple alumni, whose initial modest aim was turning the humble thermostat in your hallway into a sensor-driven, Wi-Fi-enabled node on the Internet of Things. Since this acquisition, the sprawling Google Nest division of the company has expanded to offer smart alarm systems, security cameras, home assistant devices, and even wireless routers. Let's not forget Alphabet's vast stake in the online mapping business. There's obviously Google Maps, Google Earth, and Google Street View. Chances are your house and all your previous homes are on there. Not everybody knows that Google Maps' rival Waze is also owned by Google, purchased 2013 from an Israeli startup for a cool $966 million. They're also building cars, by the way. Waymo, the firm's self-driving car subsidiary, is currently offering an autonomous rideshare service in Phoenix, Arizona, and looks set to be rolled out further just as soon as it's deemed safe by regulators. Alphabet even has its tentacles in the healthcare business, with two noteworthy sub-brands operating in the well-being sphere. One, Verily, aims to use big data to influence and assist clinical research, and until recently was developing a smart contact lens designed to monitor the wearer's glucose levels. Another Alphabet healthcare brand is Calico, which was launched in 2013 and seeks to research, understand, and ultimately combat the very aging process itself, to cure death, as one observer puts it. If you think that sounds far-fetched, wait until you hear about Loon, the Alphabet subsidiary dedicated to providing Wi-Fi to hard-to-reach areas of South America and Africa using hot air balloons. Or what about Wing, an Alphabet-owned drone delivery service that's already proven itself operationally on 3 continents? That's before we get into Google's 2014 acquisition of UK AI startup DeepMind, which offers the firm a commanding lead in the development of working artificial intelligence systems. Did we mention Google's financing arm? Capital G currently has some $3 billion under management and is a key investor in big-name brands like Lyft, Airbnb, and Duolingo. Separate to Capital G, Alphabet's GV is a standalone venture capital fund with some $5 billion under its management, with particular interest in the life sciences and so-called frontier technologies. And then there's cloud computing. While it lags behind Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure, Alphabet's cloud business still nets the firm around $20 billion in revenue a year. Not bad. So what does the future hold for this sprawling giant? There's every chance that, owing to its mammoth size, the next few years will see Alphabet ever more in the firing line of regulators like the Federal Trade Commission, or FTC. Senior Democrat politician Elizabeth Warren has expressed concern about potential monopoly practices, like the fact Alphabet owns both Google Maps and Waze. Consumers are also growing increasingly wary of big data's intrusion into all of our lives. Just this month, when Alphabet reported the successful acquisition of health tracker Fitbit for $2.1 billion, there was an online outcry about exactly what Google might do with all that intensely personal workout data, some of it going back years. Can Alphabet hope to counter these legitimate objections and see off a regulatory breakup? Maybe, but only by borrowing a leaf out of Fitbit's book and taking some pretty bold steps. What do you think? Has Google grown too big for its boots? Is it fine for tech giants to harvest our data in exchange for providing practical tools we use every day? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for even bigger and therefore better tech content.